Hello, this is DrPaulCottrell, and I'm going to be talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that has arisen recently. What I'm going to say is going to offend everybody, everybody. So, buckle up because this is what's really happening. And Americans aren't going to like it. Israelis aren't going to like it. The Palestinians aren't going to like it. The Iranians aren't going to like it. The other actors in the Middle East aren't going to like it. The secular Jews aren't going to like it. The Orthodox Jews aren't going to like it. So I think in social media, it's too easy to see one side being protected or one side being sounded off, right? There are these camps, pro this, anti that, right? You got to step back and look at the whole mosaic, right? And this is a very long problem that it goes all the way back to Abraham, right? And, the two children, one from Sarah and one from a Egyptian, right? So this has been in the works for thousands of years, right? So anyone that wants to focus on borders and all this that are relatively contemporary in contemporary human history in the last, let's say, 75 years or 100 years or whatever is irrelevant, totally irrelevant to going all the way back to the actual seed of Abraham with, I think it was Hagar. All right. So you got to put that aside. So all these international fair experts, thinking that they're going to be able through their contemporary liberalism, to understand this two-piece, this peace process through a two-state solution or an elimination of one side versus the other, that they don't understand what's really going on below and above. All right, so keep that in mind that this goes all the way back thousands of years, all the way to Abraham and Hagar. Secondly, the Jewish people have just went through a holiday season that starts, depending on where you want to put the delineation, but it starts with Rosh Hashanah. There's 10 days, then Yom Kippur, and then there's the beginning of Sukkot, and then it ends with Simchat Torah. Rosh Hashanah this year started on the Sabbath, and it is customary normally to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. All right, but you don't blow the shofar during the Sabbath if Rosh Hashanah coincides with the Sabbath. This is an important point that you don't hear anyone say, not even Ben Shapiro, all right, he's a clown. But okay, so on Rosh Hashanah this year, we didn't blow the shofar the first night and the first day because it was on the Sabbath. All right, the ruling is that you're not supposed to carry things on the Sabbath, including a shofar. So this is the reason we don't do that. So on the second night of Rosh Hashanah, or the second, in the second day, we blow the shofar. All right. Now, when you blow the shofar, depending on what kind of interpretation, and when someone really dives into the esotericness of the Bible or the Torah or and the commentaries, it gets really deep. There's maybe a simplistic explanation, but there are infinite levels of understanding, even of just how words are next to each other within the Torah and the Bible. That's why it's such an infinite text. All right. Now, depending on the interpretation, what level of interpretation you're looking at, the blowing the shofar is a call to the congregation. Another level of that is to remind people that this is the start of the season and you need to start thinking about how to improve your existence, your following of certain precepts, we call mitzvahs, and commandments. There's 613 of them, and how you take stock in your life, right? You kind of like, you're starting to think about where you can improve, and where where you went wrong, and try to bring more joy and peace in the world. Another interpretation, which is just as valid, of the blowing the shofar, because there's different tunes, and when one hears it, it's strange, because it's really going to the soul, right? And what is interesting, a sidebar here, the shofar is a ram's horn, right? Okay, and the wider part of the shofar, the ram's horn, is actually connected to the head, and there's the horn gets smaller and smaller as it's moving away from that, right? And that piece is cut, right? So there's a little outlet and then a larger outlet, and so you're blowing through something very small, and it's releasing into a larger sphere, or larger realm, or larger body, right? Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind, that the one that's blowing the shofar, usually the cantor for the high holy days, is taking something small with a certain tonation and projecting it into a larger apparatus, right? And that the Shema, right? This is a prayer that's extremely important to Jews. That's tied to tefillin and the mezuzah. Has certain letters, and the shin has certain shapes, and there you can count literally the notes within certain letters within the Shema. This is the first phrase of the Shema, and that's a very Kabbalistic gematria kind of thing of the shofar blowing. All right. And in some communities they blow it so many times, and in other communities they add an additional number of notes, and there are reasons, because it can connect to another verse in the Torah that has a certain number, and that's the reason why they blow it an additional amount. So there is that level, all right? But there is this level of silencing the prosecutor, silencing the one that's actually, when someone, because during this time period, one's life is going to be written in the book of life or the book of death, or the maybe book, right? And it's more finalized in Yom Kippur. Some communities think that even when it is still in the unknown, it can be nullified, or I should say solidified, right? If you're going to be written in the book of life or the book of death at the end of Sukkot. During Sukkot, you take these different branches and a certain type of citrus fruit, right? And you wave it every day, right? And you say certain prayers. At the very end of Sukkot, you take the willow branches and you beat it on the ground 5 times, and that's silencing the prosecutor. Some people would call this Satan, right? But you're silencing the prosecutor, because the prosecutor is basically saying, this is what this person did wrong. While you're asking during Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur all the way through Sukkot, because you don't know if you're written in the book of life or the book of death, right? You're trying to silence the prosecutor and get your prayers to God, right? So the sounding of the shofar is the very beginning of trying to silence the prosecutor. On the Sabbath, it couldn't be sounded. So this doesn't happen all the time, because it's based on the lunar calendar, right? So some years Rosh Hashanah may be on a Saturday. It starts on like Friday night. Sometimes it doesn't. So some years you may not be sounding the shofar on the first night of Rosh Hashanah. That is an omen. That's a bad omen. And Shapiro doesn't say that. A lot of these liberal analysis from CNN and Fox, and you got these even conservative analysis types, they don't understand this very important piece of metaphysics. The shofar couldn't be sounded to silence the great Satan, right? Or the prosecutor, depending on how you want to classify this prosecutor or their name. But the great prosecutor silencing death, right? So that's not good, because when those kinds of years happen, those aren't that it starts off a little rough. Doesn't mean it's going to end rough, but it starts off rough. All right. Okay. Then you have the anniversary of the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. Okay. You got to remember, Simchat Torah is basically the ending of this long period of time between Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur, through Sukkot, and then the finishing of the reading of the Torah and the beginning of the next reading of the Torah. So it goes in cycles. So Simchat Torah, we end the cycle, and we're going to start with Bereshis. And so it's God created the heaven and the earth, right? That's where we started it. So so we didn't sound the shofar at this year at the very beginning, because of it being the Sabbath. All right. And we have the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. That was in 1973. And this is where the Orthodox aren't going to like what I'm going to have to say. Now, I'm sure the Orthodox understands exactly what I'm saying about not blowing the shofar on, the first day of Rosh Hashanah. And, we're not supposed to during the Sabbath, but it's harder to silence the prosecutor, especially if you have a group of people that are not following the precepts of the Torah. All right. So, and you'll see why I'm saying that with the raid that took place with the paratroopers. All right. So the Orthodox community needs to remember that what was part of the strength of the Yom Kippur War? It was the Tefillin campaign that was taking place, that came right out of New York. Around the world, they were laying tefillin, which are the boxes that Jews put on their head and their arm. And it's kind of hard to describe this unless you're Jewish, but when you have a holiday, an important holiday, let's say the Sabbath or Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, or Simchat Torah or Sukkot, or there are certain holidays that you will not be putting tefillin on, because that holiday gives you the spiritual energy that the tefillin would be giving you. Okay, but on regular days you put the tefillin on, because there is a spiritual energy that is brought down, that's very similar to a holiday, right? And it's tied into the Shekhinah and all this, and it gets really esoteric, right? And the Shema is in the tefillin. All right. So, and remember what I said, the Shema's notes for the blowing the shofar can be seen with counting certain shapes on certain letters within the first phrase of Shema. All right. And then also tied to another verse within the Torah, right? For the additional notes that some communities do. So back in 1973, there was this tefillin campaign, and it took off. And a lot of people in Israel were laying tefillin. A lot of people in America were laying tefillin. And this caught, gained momentum around the world, right? And so when you put the tefillin on, that's doing mitzvah. So you had a wide range of people doing mitzvahs, right? And bringing blessing to the world, and bringing that divine energy. Okay. So the Orthodox communities in around the world, especially in the United States and in Israel, are failing because there is everything was, when you listen to the news, it's like intelligence failure, or inside job, or really good coordination from Hamas, right? But they're not realizing that some of these things that were happening were because the Jewish people did something on a spiritual level that they should have been doing, and for some people they were doing the wrong thing. All right. And so the Orthodox community is failing because the tefillin campaign isn't happening. You don't see it in New York. You don't see it in Israel. And all it is focused on intelligence failure. And there have been some rabbis, I don't know the level of observance, but there are some rabbis out there that seem to be Orthodox. But there are like really ultra Orthodox types, right? But there are some rabbis that are saying that this is not, there's more to this. This is not because of Hamas, but the liberal and the average layman is going to misinterpret what I'm saying. The average liberal, the average layman, and they are two different types of people, are going to say, well, Dr. Paul Cottrell said that Hamas wasn't involved. What I'm saying is that God is more involved in this than Hamas. And this is why the liberals are going to get really scared. All right. Because there's something really big happening here. Now, the Orthodox, they should have. So let me start picking apart these different groups that are going to get all mad on everything I say. The Orthodox, the Jewish Orthodox, I mean, you failed, because where's the mitzvah campaign? Because that's going to be a component of being able to win this war. And believe me, this is a new war in the Middle East. And by doing mitzvahs, you're going to be able to get the divine energy to be able to win. Because the problem, the failure, the porosity of what just happened, and the failure of, quote, the intelligence, was because you have a population that was at a rave during Simchat Torah, while they should have been dancing with the Torah and not dancing at the rave. And if you notice, all the people that seem to be have been captured are liberal Jews. And you got to people need to realize that there are different segments of society, right? You know, there's different segments of society in the United States, but there are different segments of society in Israel. There are these liberal Jews that are not observant. They have served in the IDF, right? They are, you know, for country, but many of them are for a two-state solution. Fine. If that's what they want to do, that's their neighbors, and that's their choice. But the thing is, not all Israelis are religious. And when it comes to following the mitzvahs, if a lot of Jews don't follow, God gets upset. If a lot of Jews follow, God is happy. It's really that simple. But you'll have the scientific community out there that has the PhDs and, you know, and has, understanding quantum physics and all that. You will, poo-poo that idea. They'll think that there's not divine interface between the upper and the lower. All right. But so you have this, now I'm going to switch to going after the liberals now. Okay, so the Orthodox, you failed by not doing the Tefillin campaign and pushing for more mitzvahs. We can't just say Tehillim, all right? And there have been very Orthodox, famous, very wise people during the Yom Kippur War that stated this. You know, it's about bringing simcha, bringing happiness to your community during these times of stress, saying Tehillim, but not focusing on Tehillim, and getting the word out to the community that is not following mitzvahs very well within the Jewish community to start doing them. It means laying the tefillin, davening, that's praying, putting on the mezuzah on the doorpost, following kashrut laws. Because there is a big part of the Jewish community that has drifted off and turned into, a non-observant community that's very liberal, right? Your typical liberal Jew in New York is the problem on why you have the porosity in Israel. Because of the lack of following of mitzvahs. All right. Now, so these individuals you watch on the news, you didn't see anyone that was Orthodox. They weren't there. Why is that? All right. Now, the conspiracy theorists will just say, well, this must be a cabal and blah, 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 blah. No, it's very simple. The Orthodox were in the shul dancing with the Torah during Simchat Torah. The liberal Jews, the non-following Jews, even though that they support Israel and they served in the IDF. Just because you serve in the IDF doesn't mean that you're a religious Jew, right? Or a practicing Jew, right? So these people, during Yom Tov, during a holiday, were at a rave and they were attacked by Hamas, a surprise attack. Now, the Israeli military should have been there much quicker, and there's a lot of talk about why that happened. On a spiritual level, the society in Israel is not observant. At a military level, there may have been an inside job or some sort of divergent of good intel, and not having the that quick response that they should have had. All right, that's left for debate, but I think that the main contribution that I'm offering in this video is that there's the spiritual component. So the Orthodox failed with the whole mitzvah campaign, and in the Toiling Campaign. It worked in 1973, but where is it right now? Because there's no leader. There's no leader. There's no spiritual leader. All right, that's a problem because it's decentralized, and it's not. There's everyone's got their butt up their ass, their head up their ass. All right, so all right, so you have this. You have the liberal Jew, non-observant, in the desert at a rave, all these 20-year-olds, right, that just got out of the IDF, right? Because you got to remember, they when they reach a certain age, they have to serve, right? And so many years of service. I think it's 2, but maybe it's 3. But then, if what I remember is that they recycle into the reserve, and they have to be called up once in a while for training. So all of my Hebrew teachers, were part of the the IDF. So so you have these individuals out there where they should have been in shul, in the synagogue. Instead, they're at the rave, and they're punished. This is the story of Amalek attacking the Jewish people that were weak, that were behind the line while they were moving out of Egypt, and they were roaming the desert, right? So you have the ark. What I'm going to say is really deep. You have the ark, and you have the Shekhinah that's facing the ark, and you have the more religious that the individuals are, or the more holy they are, the closer they are to the ark. The Kohanim, the Levites, and then the more religious tribes, right? But then the ones that are weaker spiritually are farther and farther away from the Shekhinah, farther and farther away from the ark of the covenant. And that weakness allows for someone that's evil, that gets spiritual sustenance from the evil side, can attack and kill the straggling Jews that are farther away. It's not by accident that this thing happened in the desert in the south. All right. Spiritually, these people that were at the rave, I'm not saying everyone, but I would say the far majority, are these liberal Jews that are non-observant. All right. This is the reason why it happened. Now, liberal Jews will not want to hear that. They will not want to hear it, because they think the problem is it's all Hamas, or the problem is it's all the problems within the Israeli government, causing the strife within the West Bank and in Gaza. That's how they want to frame it. But the reality is that you have to shine. You have to look and realize, just like during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, what did you do wrong? Even if you're a holy person, or if you're a not holy person, if you're a non-observant Jew or an observant Jew, everyone has to go through that teshuvah, that self-reflection, and try to improve. All right. So the Orthodox community, you screwed up because the mitzvah campaign ain't happening. You failed on this. Doesn't mean you can't pick up the pieces and move forward, but the Orthodox community around the world, especially in the United States and in Israel, has failed on this part. The liberal Jew, the non-observant Jew that's in Israel, you failed. And because of your lifestyle, you allowed spiritually to have the porosity and to have Amalek come and get you. Now, the liberal Jew out there is going to go, blah, 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 you're American. Blah, 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 blah. Well, you know what? There's some really wise people behind the scenes that are saying the same damn thing I'm saying. All right. And if you really listen to someone that has been religious all their life and has a very strong sense of Torah law and of the mysteries of it, and you listen to them, they are the highest intelligent individuals that you'll ever meet. Way farther than quantum physics people. All right. And quantum physics, string theorists, and all them, they're pretty bright, right? But there's something missing. There's a wisdom and an understanding that some of these religious people have, that their intelligence level is through the roof. But you don't see them. They're behind the scenes, right? And they're thinking the same thing that I'm saying, right? They articulated it, much more kabbalistically, but you're saying the same thing. So pay attention. Pay attention. All parties are at fault here. The Israelis, the religious, the non-religious, and even the Muslims, right? Okay, so the non-religious Israelis had an Achilles heel, and it started on not blowing the shofar during the Sabbath. We can't blow the shofar in the Sabbath. We're prohibited doing that, right? But that, on a spiritual level, kind of made the Jewish people a little bit weaker. But we could have backfilled that weakness. We could have filled up that weakness. We could have strengthened that weakness by being with the Torah during Simchat Torah. But that's not what happened with the liberal Jews, right? And the liberal Jews ended up not being, following the precepts of Simchat Torah. So, okay. So now you have the liberal Jews that been attacked, and some of them died, some of them were captured, and a lot of them died. And we're talking about, I don't know, over 1,000 now people have died. As of this recording, on the Israeli side, I think as of this recording, I think it was about 300 or 400 on the Palestinian side, or the Hamas side. All right, now what's the problems with the Palestinians and the the Hamas, the Hezbollah, and the Arabs at large? And they're not going to like what I'm going to say. Israel, biblically, is for the Jews. It is stated very clearly what the borders are, and it's more than what Israel is right now, right? It's very clear what the borders are. And there's an awful lot of land around Israel that these individuals can go to. And again, it's coming from the premise that this is over a 3,000-year arc of history. And you can't view this because of the spiritual component of this, the metaphysical component of this. You cannot look at this in contemporary Westphalian concepts. It will never work. So the two-state solution, even though it is the secular Jewish right, it is incoherent. It's not in phase with what is written. And therefore, it is always going to have problems until the day where the borders are reestablished. Now, Hamas, is a terrorist organization that's trying to prevent the peace in that region. But people don't realize that when the temple is rebuilt, not only is the temple and the sacrifices and the incense being offered a daily basis, multiple times a day, 3 times a day or whatever. The sacrificing of the animals, different types of sacrifices, is cleansing the soul of the individual, but also of the nation, of the congregation, but also the world. And the incense is kind of this calming effect. So there's the cleansing of the soul, and then the peace offering to allow for communication between the upper and the lower, right? You have to cleanse the soul, you have to cleanse the congregation, you have to cleanse the world. And then you have to allow for the peace offering through the incense to be able to have this communication, right? So the way the temple is supposed to work is not only are the Jews to do this, but also the 70 nations are supposed to do this. Now, there's more than 70 nations, but there probably are subsets of different nations within the number that we have, right? But the nations of the world are going to have to provide sacrifice to get blessing from the temple. Until the liberals, the non-Jewish community, right, understand this concept that the temple is actually going to be the blessing to all nations, not just to the Jewish people. They're never going to understand the need for the rebuilding of the temple. I don't know when the temple will be rebuilt. I suspect around 230 years from now. But these events that are taking place are building up to a period where the temple will be rebuilt. My understanding, my interpretation of what is going on is that we are the generations that have to go through the war and through the spilling of blood to allow for another generation that did not do that to be able to actually build the temple. The warring people cannot build the temple, is my understanding. It's the generation that benefits. So the Muslims they're not going to like that, because that means that the Dome of the Rock is gone. It's gone, right? And they're going to go all up in the air, go up. But the reality is the situation is that the temple being rebuilt is actually going to bring the blessing to all the nations. It's not just to the Jewish people. And this is the fighting that's happening. So if you step back and you actually watch the news, and try to, and they're trying to think, this is the reason. It's actually, it's heavily on, part of it's God's punishment, and part of it is God's blessing. And it's not so clear that God is punishing the Jewish people and what just happened, but he's also, in essence, there's a blessing that's wrapped up in it. And so I think some of the knee-jerk reactions that are taking place with the liberal community, that's Jewish or non-Jewish, I think deep down they know this. And so they're kind of fighting it. They're trying to fight it. They're like saying the atrocities by the Israelis, or the atrocities by the Palestinians or the Hamas. One, it sells eyeballs and advertisements, so there is this monetary component to it. But I think that if you really listen to some of these types, these policymakers and conflict analysts, I think deep down inside, their way of life is going to change. And it's not going to be of a liberal. It's not going to be of a liberal mindset. It's going to be it's going to be the realization that the CRT type things and the gender fluidity and the destruction of the family unit, there is an anger at the higher level above our plane that is starting to rumble. So now, then you have, terrorist organizations that are getting funded, and how the United States are part of that funding. Money is fungible, and we gave money to Iran. So the United States citizen is partially to blame for the funding of, the conflicts in the Middle East. But in another way, it's tried to stabilize too. It's not so cookie cutter. It's not so black and white in terms of blame. Everyone's to blame. The American citizen, the American military, the American government, the Israeli military, the Israeli government, the religious Jews, the non-religious Jews, the Muslims that are religious, the ones that are not, the Palestinians, the Iranians, they're all to blame. But the facts are this: a Westphalian mindset in that region is never going to work. Never. And we are only 230 some odd years away before the building of the temple. Now, most people would say, well, I don't care. I'm going to be dead by blah, 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 blah. The reality is that we are a generation that is part of this cleansing of this process to allow for the rebuilding of the temple. It's going to be rebuilt. The Dome of the Rock, mosque is going to be gone, and there's going to be blessing to the whole world and all the nations, because they are going to realize that the Shekhinah will actually come back and rest upon the earth. Now, a lot of people that are from the scientific community or philosophers or whatever that do not, have a strong affinity towards religion would try to rationalize this. But when you're talking about an upper world angry and also trying to bring blessing at the same time, rationality is out the door. It's not about rationality. It's not. So now, in this plane, what we're going to see is a lot of carnage. In this world, and during this conflict, we're going to see a lot of carnage. Now, if we see, we're probably going to see a two-front war on Israel. So the two-front war is the southern, the Gaza problem, and then the northern part with Lebanon and Hezbollah. So you got Hamas in the south and Hezbollah in the north. Iran, my understanding, funds Hezbollah. I could be wrong if, maybe they also fund Hamas. I'm not sure. Now, because of this two-front war, it may cause, this squeezing on Israel. The United States are going to get involved and provide air support. If Israel, and right now it's lower probability, it's only probably around 10%. If Israel feels that there's an existential threat to its existence, and or one of their cities is leveled, like Tel Aviv, they will use unconventional means to destroy Iran. We may, and if it feels that it has an existential threat, which is not there yet, only 10% chance, they will use nukes on Iran. And we may see the actual detonation of a nuclear weapon in the Middle East by this year or next year, depending on how long this lasts. But that's only a 10% chance right now. But if they level Tel Aviv or a major city like that, with conventional means, Israel has talks within its defense planning strategy to use unconventional means. Now you throw that into the problem that we have with Ukraine and Russia, and Putin has already talked about using tactical nukes. This may escalate. The United States gets more involved in the Middle East again, increases the chances of a move in Taiwan by China. We may be seeing the beginnings of World War III. Small chance, but we may see the beginnings of it. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but the risks are starting to elevate. What I think is going to happen is that there will be a two-front war. Israel will not feel that it has an existential threat on its hands. And they will neutralize the northern front relatively easily. The southern front is going to be much harder. And that's going to be bloody. There's going to be a lot of casualties on both sides, especially on the Israeli side. And they're going to need to sweep Gaza. The question is, how much fortitude does Israel have as it is trying to sweep Hamas out of Gaza? How much fortitude does it have when the international community starts to be negative towards Israel? Just like during 9/11 in the United States, and there's a lot of problems that happened during 9/11 that may be very similar. There's some evidence to suggest there's similarities with this crisis that we're going through right now. You know, that this is kind of a 9/11 kind of situation. But there was goodwill when we were starting to ramp up the war effort in the Middle East. And that goodwill evaporated relatively quickly. All right. For good reason, right? But I think that there's going to be the quote, the goodwill of the world as Israel starts to level Gaza and the bodies start to pile up on both sides, that the international community is going to tell Israel that's too much. Now, from the perspective of the land borders being already solidified in the Bible, and the idea that when the temple is built, that all nations will get the blessing when they do the peace offerings, that in the long run, meaning not our lifetime, potentially not even the generation right after, the generation hasn't even been born yet, but in the future, 230 years or so, roughly, give or take, they're going to benefit from this. And as society gets more and more entangled, and I've already talked about this entanglement idea, and as grown and built up infrastructures and stuff, it's more expensive, it's harder, it's more deadly, it's more bloody to be able to get back to a reset for the temple time. It will be less destructive in the long term if you do it now than to do it later. And but this is not going to be pretty for the Palestinians at all. And it's the realization that even though on Israel as a state, right, is the proto state of a larger thing that's going to happen with the rebuilding of the temple, and the borders will be reconfigured back to temple time. That means that the Palestinians are not part of that. They need to come to grips with that. The Muslim community needs to come to grips that the mosque on the Temple Mount is going to be gone. Now, maybe it'll be gone in 230 years, maybe earlier, but it's going to be gone. And we are one of those generations that are part of that stepping stone, those milestones to get to that point. And we probably over that 230 years probably see the decline of what we would call America. We are, America, the United States is declining. It's not a, and you just take that out 230 years, and I think it'd be easier to see that there would be a fracturing of the country. So everyone is at fault. The Israeli government, with going back and forth with the two-state solution, trying to do a two-state solution for some governments, and then more conservative governments go with more settlers in the West Bank, right? The Palestinians, keep on holding to this idea that they're gonna, that Israel is theirs. It's never been theirs, from a biblical standpoint. It's never been, you know, it's not part, they're not part of the covenant. And they will get blessing by being amalgamated into the wider Arab world. And those countries will get the blessing from the temple when the peace offerings are offered annually. So it's a really, what I am saying is a really deep concept, right? You don't hear it on Ben Shapiro's show. You don't hear it on CNN. You got all these analysts trying to think it's all, it's all about intelligence and it's all about this, and there's like this gigantic metaphysical thing that's going on. The liberal Israelis, they're weakening Israel, just like how the liberals are weakening America, all right, in the United States. So it's the same problem. It's weakening it, and destroying the family unit, especially in the United States. They're not having kids, or they're anti-family oriented. They're not being observant, depending on what religion you're talking about. There are an awful lot of non-religious Christians. There's an awful lot of non-religious Muslims. There's an awful lot of non-religious Jews, and that you have a large section of society that is getting into this whole CRT and fluid gender concepts and stuff, and it is antithetical to the base, the foundation of religion, of whatever religion you practice in monotheism. So these liberal types are destroying these countries. Right? So in America, we're seeing it with the CRT and this bowing down to this idea of reparations and all this. Right? In Israel, something very similar. They're feeling as though that that they need to for the state of Israel. You got to remember, with the liberals in Israel are not religious. So they don't believe in the idea that there's the Temple Mount that's going to, and the sacrifices that are going to be coming back in 230 years. They don't have that concept in their brain. So they think that a Westphalian concept to try to normalize borders is going to be the solution for that area. And a Westphalian perspective is not going to work, because this thing has been set in motion for 3,000 years. So, and people are trying to socially manage it. It's so you think you can socially manage it, but the reality of it is that there are curses and blessings that are coming from on high that are governing the events that are taking place. We think that our efforts are what's guiding this, but the bottom line is that there were over 1,000 Israelis that died because God wanted that to happen. There are going to be thousands of of Palestinians that are going to die from the incursion into the Gaza Strip because God wanted that to happen. And that's why I said that everyone that is listening to this is going to be upset. There's not one person that I haven't offended in this whole situation. The religious Jews, the Orthodox, you failed with not reaching out to the non-religious community and making sure that they're doing mitzvahs. And even within the religious community, being able to bring the simcha and don't focus so much on Tehillim. Reading Tehillim is important, but focusing in a state of mourn, it's not going to solve the problem. You got to bring simcha, and you got to bring more mitzvahs to the world. That's how this is going to stop from the religious point of view, right? The same thing. The reason why the religious Jews, this goes all the way back to precepts within the Torah. Religious Jews didn't have to serve in the forces during the biblical times and even today, because they were studying Torah. Because by studying Torah, they were elevating the knowledge of Torah in the world and creating these mitzvahs and bringing blessing down to allow peace to happen for the nation and for the world. So, all right, well, you take that same concept, these religious people, you got to go out there and make sure that people are doing mitzvahs. The biggest thing that we saw since the 1973 campaign that happened during the Yom Kipper War was the Tefillin campaign, right? Where is it? Religious Jews failed miserably. Liberal Jews, you shouldn't have been at the rave and getting blown away by Hezbollah. You should have been in the shul during Simchas Torah. And the reality of it is a lot of these young Israeli rave types are a bunch of drug addicts. Again, a problem with liberalism, a problem of destroying the family unit, a problem with losing religion, right? Either Judaism or Christianity or Islam, right? These monotheistic religions, they do bring blessing to the world, and they do bring harmony and a stronger family unit if followed properly. The problem is it gets hijacked by extremists and this kind of thing. Peace will come to the world when we realize that the whole world needs to go through a cleansing that is tied to sacrificial offerings, and that cleansing then is elevated through the incense offering that will allow for peace to come to this world. It's very Kabbalistic. A lot of the philosophers out there, that want to just be like Aristotle, right? Won't agree with me, but it's okay. They don't have to agree with me. The Muslims are at fault because they're not realizing that their occupation of the territory from contemporary times does not fit in line with, it's not congruent with what will happen in the next 230 years. And it's not going to just happen like that. We are slowly staircasing up to that event. And we are part of the generation that is, going through this tumultuous period of time to allow for this to happen. The Israeli Defense Force failed, potentially was infiltrated, potentially there was a stand down, very similar to 9/11. The United States had a stand down, right? There seems to be a strong evidence to suggest that 9/11 was an inside job. Well, it might be that there was a strong evidence that there was an inside job that was going on with Israel. All right. But it was allowed to be successful because God wanted it to be that way. Israel's being punished, but Israel is also getting a blessing. The Palestinians are being punished, but the Palestinians will also be getting a blessing. And it's very, very hard to square that concept that I just said, but that's how it's working. Israel will gain and lose. And the temple will be rebuilt into, around 230 years, maybe a little bit earlier. The Palestinians are going to lose land, but they will gain a blessing from that too. Just like how Ishmael and Hagar was pushed out of the tent of Abraham, right? But there was a blessing that was given to them during that push, during that exile out of Abraham's tent. It's the same thing. The expulsion of Hagar and Ishmael is going to be the expulsion of the Palestinians out of Israel. It's going to take a while. It may not even be in our generation, but it's going to happen. A lot of people are going to flip out. Well, you can't say that. You're pro-Israel. You're pro. I'm just stating something that's been written down for thousands of years. And so if you don't like what I'm saying, take it up with God. I don't really care. But the bottom line is that everyone's at fault here. But in a strange way, everyone's going to get a blessing and everyone's going to get a curse in the same time. And the magnitude of it is going to be probably different, for different groups. If Israel feels like there's an existential threat to their existence, Iran is going to be facing unconventional warfare. But it's about 10% right now. But, and I think overall world war conflict, right, that really escalates with China and Russia, probably is elevated to about 20 or 25% right now. You got to look at things in probabilities when you're looking at this. But when it comes to the Middle East and Israel and the Palestinians, a Westphalian concept, with borders that were of contemporary and not of biblical origin, is never going to work. Never going to work. Because that's not what God wants. And humans cannot fight what God wants. With that said, please subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 channels on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. I don't offend everybody when I do a video, but I think it's very important to do a video that basically says everyone's at fault here. Orthodox Jews, non-religious Jews, religious Muslims, non-religious Muslims, terrorists that are from, that are tied to Islamic Jihad, ones that are not terrorists, that are tied, that are not, that are Muslim, that are not, tied to Islamic Jihad, right? The United States is involved, for better and for worse. The European Union is, involved. There's some talk that potentially there were even arms that were sent from Ukraine to Hamas and Hezbollah. I don't know if that's true or not, but the bottom line is that everyone's at fault, and a big part of it, like 90% of it, is because of a metaphysical origin. Liberalism is gonna die. It's gonna die. But it's going to kick and scream, just like how the Muslims and the Palestinians are kicking and screaming as Israel proper is moving towards the temple times. They're the same thing. Because the world is going to be getting a blessing that is going to be antithetical to liberalism. They're going to see their error. Some of them are going to burn with that error. Some of them are going to repent and not burn from that error. Now, some people are never going to understand what I'm saying because it's very Kabbalistic and it's very, and I'm not that much of a religious person, but I do understand, bits and pieces of what's going on. So please subscribe to all 3 channels. I have 3 channels on YouTube. The link is in the description. Please subscribe to my Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble channels. The links are in the description. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And let me get some products here that are over at the corner here. So I have a lot of different products in my store. I have nano silvers, which is the nano silver is a structural nano silver, right? And it's liquids and gels. What that does is it neutralizes pathogens and it reduces that kind of inflammation, right, from those pathogens. I have soaps and lozenges. I have a great toothpaste, the best toothpaste that you will ever get. It is a lot better than Alex Jones. Alex Jones's toothpaste, a lot better. All right. It doesn't have any fluoride in it. Get my toothpaste. You'll be amazed. And, it'll bring down that kind of like gum inflammation. It'll neutralize those pathogens. It'll reduce the plaque. And when you do that, you're going to get better cardiovascular health. Now, some other products that I have Boomer products. I have vitamin D3, zinc, magnesium. I have multivitamins that's actually through amio, resveratrol, B complex, good night formula, which is a tryptophan and melatonin sleep aid, clarity factor, which helps with reducing brain fog. It's better than that Brain Force by Alex Jones, and collagen. I have a lot of different probiotics. You need a good gut biome. So you take the probiotics every day. I have an amio one that's in the capsule form. I like to take the powdered form because I can mix it with my hummus and I just take it that way. But I also put in my hummus is lignans. So here, this product here, right? It's in a powdered form, and I mix it with my probiotic and my hummus, and take it every day. So what this product does is it's going to help with your immune system and your hormonal system. So in the endocrine system, we have different axes, right? And you have the hypothalamus communicating to your pituitary, either your anterior or your posterior pituitary, and releasing certain types of hormones, right? Secreting hormones, and it communicates to different glands, your adrenal glands, or your thyroid glands, or so your reproductive system also works in this way. So having proper hormonal balance and having a strong immune system is really important for part of the anti-aging protocol, but also just just overall health, right? So taking lignans is going to improve that immune system, but also that hormonal balance. In addition, I was talking about the multivitamin. Here's the multivitamin here that you should be getting as part of your supplementation, monthly supplementation. It's a great product. It's through amio, and I have 3 pillars basically. The nano silver pillar, you take liquids and gels. That eliminates, neutralizes the pathogens. Taking products that will boost up your immune system by bringing down that inflammation, like turmeric and ashwagandha. Ashwagandha helps control your blood glucose levels. If you have too much glucose, you're going to have problems like diabetes. You're going to start causing problems with your kidney. There's going to be an inflammatory response that takes place. So you want to bring that down. You bring down the blood glucose levels, right? And strong antioxidants like C60 and resveratrol. Neutralize those pathogens or neutralize those reactive oxygen species and bring the ATP up, because when you bring down that reactive oxygen species with C60 or resveratrol, what will happen is you are reducing the stress in the cell and allowing for mitochondrial health to improve. And when you have the mitochondrial health to improve, then what's going to happen is you're going to have more ATP. Part of the electron transport chain mechanism within the mitochondria can be boosted by taking the B complex, because some of your B complexes vitamins are going to be cofactors for the electron transport chain, like B1, B2, 3, 5, right? So and then on top of it, your B12 is really important to prevent macrocytic anemia. So, there are these, taking supplements on a regular basis, you're going to improve your metabolism, you're going to improve your ATP, your energy, you're going to improve the cellular health, and you're going to fare a lot better. You're going to improve your immune system by doing this. So just follow my lead and take a look at the products that I offer. I have a plethora of supplements. So again, get the multivitamin. It's a great product. Also get the lignans and the probiotic in powdered form. The lignans is going to help you with the hormonal balance and also immune system. The probiotic is going to allow for the proper gut biome to allow for proper metabolism to take place, and actually improve your mental well-being. There is a connection between mental well-being and gut health. I also have all natural deodorants. This one is citrus. I also have it in peppermint and tea tree. This is made by Rainbow Herbals. It's made from essential oils, very high quality essential oils from the Himalayas. So please get a deodorant bar on my store. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Again, the store is called the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description. Go to the store, get the nano silvers, get the boomer products, the supplements that are going to be part of that anti-aging protocol and boost up your immune system. And also get the C60, very strong antioxidant, and you'll be amazed in how it's going to improve your health. Thank you for listening. I don't mean to be so critical when I'm doing these kinds of videos, but the reality is that there's too many people that are just picking sides. Just the American side, or just the Israeli side, or just the Jewish side, or just the Islamic side, or just the Palestinian side, or just the religious side, or just the liberal side. Everyone is at fault. Everyone. But God wanted this to happen. And it's happening for a bigger purpose. And that bigger purpose, I think, is the completion of the temple in 230 years from now, roughly 230 years from now. Maybe a little less. But we gotta realize that all parties involved, even tangential parties, are getting a curse and a blessing at the same time. But that doesn't mean that there's not going to be a lot of bloodshed. There will be a lot of bloodshed in this, and it's going to be it's going to be horrific. But in the end, on the other side, there is going to be blessing that it will be parted to the world. For everybody. But it's hard to see it. It's hard to see it because we think in our simple human minds, we have this idea of this or that. bad guy, good country, bad country, good policy, bad policy, right? But there are some truths. There are some truths that have to be followed. And the sad thing is there's an awful lot of Israelis, because of their liberalism and lack of observance to the commandments, that some of what they are seeing today is a result of their behavior. But the Orthodox have failed too. The Orthodox have failed too. And my worry with the Orthodox is they're going to be more on the side of read Tehillim and mourn, and not so much on Simcha, in terms of trying to bring happiness in the world and around your community, and also upping the mitzvahs of the Jewish people at large. That's where they're failing. So thank you for listening, and have a nice day. By the way, make sure you subscribe to all my channels. The links are in the description of this video and all my videos, and go to the store. It'll improve your health, boost your immune system, and slow down the aging process if you follow my protocol. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.